Hey guys, coming here with a deck profile for Brandt Gate. But before I get started with that, I do want to mention, I know in one of my previous videos I said it with the Keter Sanctuary analysis, I was going to analyze all the cards from all the other nations. I found that those videos are all very long and long-winded and kind of boring when I'm sitting there watching them. And if I don't want to watch them, you guys don't want to watch them. So I'm going to try tweaking my plan for what I'm going to do going into the future with this channel. So for now, I've got some deck profiles set up. Let's jump in. So as you can see here, we've got a board set up with the cards spread out. Let's jump into the profile. Let's start with our ride deck. So we've got Aurora Battle Princess Ruby Red. She's our starter. When rode upon, if you went second, draw a card. Very standard. All starters are going to look like this. So moving on. We're going to ride the Vanguard to grade 1. So Aurora Battle Princess Kyanite Blue. So when this unit is on Vanguard Circle, search your deck for one prison card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. So she looks for our prison in what we are calling our prison deck. So what's a prison? As you guys probably already know, but may not. Galaxy Central Prison Galactopolis. So this is our set order, which means that it goes into our order zone after we play it. So what's it do? We play it with we play it by resting one of our units. I was thinking of a world for a second there. And then we soul charge 3 when placed. Then, continuous, when your opponent would call a rear guard, normally they can perform the following. Soul Blast 1, and they can call 1 rear guard from the prison. Counter Blast 1, and they can call 2 rear guards from the prison. So this seems to be an overdress standard where Soul Blast gets you 1, Counter Blast gets you 2, or at least double the value of the Soul Blast. It's not always that balanced, but it seems to be a very common balancing thing. Either way, so there's other things we're going to be doing with this prison. You're probably wondering how the cards get there. So we're going to move on and ride the Vanguard again to Aurora Battle Princess Rizot Pink. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and imprisons it in your prison. You put that into the order zone that has a prison. So automatically we go to grade 2 and we get a card in our prison from our opponent. So now we're controlling what they have. We're reducing their hand size. It's almost like a discard, but they can get it back if they give us a unit. They cannot get it back if they give us an order. Alright, and then we're going to ride the Vanguard again. Aurora Battle Princess Seraph Snow. During your turn, if one of your opponent's cards is imprisoned, this unit gets plus 10k, and if 3 or more cards are imprisoned, this unit gets drive plus 1. So she gets benefits based on how many cards you have in prison. So the magic number is 3. You're probably going to be imprisoning more than that if your opponent lets you, based on the fact that you want to have as many cards in there as possible. You want to be controlling their field. You want them to have to call stuff back so that they use their resources, like their Counter Blast and their Soul Blast, for your prison and not for their precious skills. And she has a second Vanguard ability that also works on Rearguard Circle. Counter Blast 1, choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards and imprison them in your prison. So she takes 2 cards automatically. So if you used Rizot Pink, and then they didn't call that during their next turn, and then you use Seraph Snow, you're already at that 3 card threshold for your drive plus 1. So that's our ride chain plus our 1 prison. That's all I run in my deck. Some people run 2. If you want to run 2, it's fine. It's a little bit of deck thinning. People are worried about getting their prisons in their opening hand. Honestly, I'm okay saying I fail to find with Kyanite Blue. So let's move on to the meat of the deck. So starting at grade 3s, we've got Seraph Snow right up here. and we've got 3 copies of her because we already got 1 copy in the ride deck, so we can only have 3 more copies. This is to guarantee our Persona ride. Also, if we're having a hard time getting imprisoning cards, which most likely we're not going to have that hard a time because I have 12 more imprisoning cards right here. But if we have a hard time getting our imprisoning cards, we can throw her on Rearguard Circle, and then there's 4 cards in 1 turn. And her ability is Act, so she can do it multiple times, as long as, for as many copies as there are of her on the field. But aside from that, she's there for our Persona ride. So, our next card, Grana Road Fair Tigar. And this guy, look at that mechs are awesome. This guy right here, he's like the descendant of the Blouse. If you read the flavor text, he does say, you know, something about the Blue Warrior disappearing and the Crimson Warrior was born. So that's really cool that they kind of kept that whole Blau history right there. But moving along to the actual meat of the card. So what does he do? Act. Once per turn, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power +2 until end of turn. Choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and imprison it in their prison. So he gets power 2k, so he's a 15k beater, but most importantly, he, for a Soul Blast, gets you a card imprisoned every turn as long as your opponent leaves a front row. And of course they gotta leave a front row because they have to attack you, otherwise they are really slowing themselves down. That being said, you're going to have that Soul Blast from that prison. Also, there's another card down here that's going to get you some more Soul Blasts. So, Soul's not that bad in this deck. But, you know, this guy, nice 15k beater, might be boosted, might not be. I got a lot of grade 1s to boost with, so he's alright. We don't get a lot of power in this deck, so having 15k beater, pretty solid. Especially going into our next card that's also a 15k beater. So, Aurora Battle Princess Agarar Roge. So continues on Rearguard Guardian Circle. If 2 or more of your unit opponent's cards are imprisoned, in your prison, this unit gets plus 5k power and plus 10k shield. So she can be a 15k interceptor, although your opponent might not let you have that. They'll probably just drag you down to 1 or 0 cards in your prison, just because they know she's going to be a pain in the shield. But you're guaranteed to get that 15k most times on your turn, because all you need is 2 cards in your prison. And lo and behold, you have Seraph Snow, who gives you 2 cards in your prison. Anyway, what's her other ability? Auto. When this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, cost Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and imprison it in your prison. So this gets you another front row. And once again, your opponent needs to leave the front row in order to get those attacks in. So they'll slow themselves a lot if they don't give you a front row to imprison. So keep that in mind. Those cards are gonna be there. So these guys, they're your beater cards. The 15Ks plus boost. And then after that, you just have grade 1s. So what are we boosting with? One of our best boosters, well, not best booster, but best cards to have in the back row anyway. Super Speed Robo Shovel Stud. Check out that Transformer Total BP unit. I love my mechs. Act. Once per turn, Rearguard Circle, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Trust me, I'll have those resources. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and imprison it in your prison. Then, if 3 or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you draw a card. Okay, so we have the stipulation for Snow to get to 3. We have the stipulation for Roge to get to 4. He needs to get to 3 to draw a card. Drawing a card is good. I would save this skill, the Counterblast and Soul Blast, just until you can draw that card. So you want at least 2 cards in your prison before you do that, because he checks the amount of cards in the prison after you imprison the card from his ability. So keep that in mind. So really cool. So like I said, we've got 12 cards here that imprison things. So on top of Sarah Snow. So that's 16 cards. We're going to be consistently imprisoning stuff. So what's our support? What's our toolbox? Well, let's move on to another staple. Detonation, Mutant, Bulbul Mine. Check out that freaking explosive Mecha Godzilla. So beautiful. Detonation, Mutant, Bulbul Mine. At the end of the battle that this unit boosted, if your order zone has a set order, which you're guaranteed a set order in Brandt Gate, cost, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. So he gains you a soul, and you get to countercharge 1. So sure, you'll lose a unit that's boosting, but that countercharge is precious because countercharge, or counterblast, and counterblast. I mean, I just pointed at her here, but still, it's quite a bit of counterblast. And then the soul blast usage, soul. So lots of resources being used. So Bulbul Mine being so easy to get you that soul charge and that counter charge is really nice. Alright, so we have another card from our ride deck into our main deck. So what's this do on Rearguard Circle? So when this is placed on Rearguard Circle, if one of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, draw a card. You want to draw cards. Drawing cards are one of the most powerful things you can do in a card game, especially your control decks. You want to be drawing cards in your control decks. You want to be surviving until your next turn. So this guy being here, drawing you cards, you drawing into your shield, or you're drawing into your other things, it really is a necessity. What's next? So we got our PG, standard 4 PGs, Violate Dragon, the one that, can be free if you have less than 2 cards in hand. But what's our last grade 1? Atomic Caution. So this little Dalek thing, R2-D2 unit, Rearguard Guardian Circle, one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned. If your prison wow, I butchered that. If one or of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power plus 2k and shield plus 5k. So we don't get a lot of power in this deck, so having a 10k booster is actually kind of nice to just kind of push into those magic numbers, because then you're hitting 25. Now they have to guard with 15k or more in order to avoid your attack. But the shield plus 5k is really nice, so it's another 10k shield when you're defending, and you're going for a long game here. You're going for trying to just ruin their resources, ruin their board, or ruin their board so that they end up ruining their resources to get their board back. So you're going for the long game here, so having that extra defense is really nice just to keep yourself alive. And that is the main deck. And then we have our trigger lineup. So we have standard 1 over trigger. I'm running 7 crits, 4 fronts, and 4 heals. So the reason I'm running 7 crits and 4 fronts instead of 8 crit, 3 front is just like you want those numbers. You get that 10k to the front row. Now you're swinging for like 25, 35 a turn or a swing, making them have to guard with 2 or more with both of those units, because you're probably swinging with your Vanguard first because you get that triple drive. The crits are just nice because they're going to do extra damage, and that's why I run more of them, but it is nice to have more consistency with those fronts, just so that you can get that along. Plus, the over trigger, it's a pseudo front, doubling all the power, which is actually better than a front, but so it's almost like running 5 fronts, 4 fronts plus a big front on top of that. And then 4 heals. You just always want to run your 4 heals. So that is Prison. So next, we're going to move on to Orphist. Alright guys, as you can see here, I've got Orphist loaded up. So let's just jump right in to the ride chain. So, once again, got your standard starter. If you went second, draw a card when rode upon. Alright, so let's move on. Let's ride the Vanguard with Cardinal Noid Routus. So when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, search your deck for up to one world card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. So what is a world card? Once again, they are set orders. So we have two different ones over here. So Howling Moonlit Night. So it is a set order. You know, play it with Soul Blast 1. When this card is put in the order zone, draw a card. And then if this order is in your order zone, continuous. If you have one world, your world becomes Dark Knight. If you have two worlds, your world becomes Abyssal Dark Knight. So those are keywords that are important going forward. We'll cover them with the other cards. And in the other world over here, in the darkness, nobody knows. The only difference is on place, retire a unit. Retire an opponent's rear guard in the front row, which is pretty nice. Once again, like I said with Prison, your opponent is going to have things in the front row. Whether those are things you want to get rid of or not, that's up to you, but it's still a nice little control effect that kind of helps you survive. So moving along, we're going to ride the Vanguard with Cardinal Noid Cubcia. And what he does is when a world is put in your order zone, one of your units gets power plus 5k until end of turn. So usually that's going to be himself. Not too bad. It is something to just keep the game going up to grade 2. And then he gets ridden upon by Cardinal Deuce Orfist. So what he does is during your turn, if your world is Dark Knight or Abyssal Dark Knight, this unit gets power plus 5k. Nice thing is that's Vanguard Rearguard, so if you need an extra Rearguard push, that he can be an 18k beater on Rearguard Circle as well. But the main reason we play Orfist, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, cost Counterblast 2 and call up to 3 Shadow Army tokens to Rearguard Circle. So what is a Shadow Army token? That's this guy right here. So a Shadow Army token, he's basically just a grade 1 with boost that has 15k power. So really nice. You can use them to boost, you can use them to attack. You get 3 of them just for 2 counterblast from Orfist. So that is pretty fantastic. That is where you're getting most of your power. The nice thing about these guys is they let you keep most of your cards in your hand. And we're going to see why we want most of those cards in our hand most of the time coming up. Right here in the meat of our deck. So, as far as the worlds go, we already talked about them. I run 4 of each, just based on the fact that we want to see them. You want at least 2 orders in your field at all times, just so you can get those Abyssal Dark Knight bonuses. That being said, you're guaranteed to get 1 order from Routus, and then so you want to draw into your next one. Nice thing is Howling Moonlit Night is a draw engine, so that'll probably help you out, but you probably want your mulligans to look for one of these 8 orders. 8 isn't hard to find. 7 isn't hard to find either. So this is kind of nice, and who knows, we'll probably get more in the future, but this is just a Genesis of the 5 Greats deck. So that's where we're starting, and we'll see where the rest of the decks go from there. Anyway, what are our units? So we've got 3 copies of Orfist. Once again, he gets his plus 5k on Rearguard Circle if you have Dark Knight or Abyssal Dark Knight. So we're keeping that in mind while we're playing this deck. But once again, he's there for that Persona Ride. Persona Ride's really nice because it does draw you a card, which you're probably getting a card with shield. Now I know people are like, oh, you're riding, you're losing a card in hand. You're losing a card with no shield in hand to potentially draw a shielded valued card. So we want to keep that in mind. Next up, we have Electricity Plunder Monster Jabatel. And what he does is on Rearguard Circle, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, when this unit would attack, it would battle all of your opponent's units in a column. So that means that it attacks the unit that you're hitting in the front row and the unit directly behind it. So you can take out an entire column with this. And yes, that does mean that they have to guard individually for both of those units. So if they can't do that or they don't want to do that, they usually end up giving up their back row unit so that they can either save the front row unit, or if you're going into a rear guard and they don't want to waste shield on a rear guard because they want to save that for their Vanguard, they basically are giving up an entire column, which means they have to refill that column somehow. So next up we have Frigid Mutant Drumler. He kind of looks like a monster shark. He looks really cool. When this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, cost Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and draw a card. CB1, SB1 for a card is pretty standard so far, at least within this nation. He's a good filler, he's a good draw engine, just keep things moving forward. You would be getting a 10k potentially beater with probably 25 total attack power because he's probably going to be boosted by a Shadow Army, just so you can draw a card. But like I said, you're probably using him to draw into him or draw into him, or even draw a trigger so that you can have shield power. And yes, drawing into triggers isn't necessarily a bad thing in this deck. So next up we have 4 copies of Detonation and Mutant Oval Mine. So we already went over his ability, put into Soul after boost, countercharge 1. Countercharge 1 because Orifice counter blasts 2 and Recharger counterblasts 1. So basically you're using a lot of counterblast, so that countercharge is where you want to go. On top of that, you also have all these worlds up here that Soul Blast. So putting them into Soul helps you keep your worlds active. Up next, Useful Recharger. When this unit is put on a Guardian Circle, cost Counterblast 1, and if your world is Dark Knight, this unit gets shield plus 5k until end of turn. If it is Abyssal Dark Knight, this unit gets 10k shield until end of turn. So it's a 5 to 15k shield. So you counterblast 1, you get that extra shield. If you're Dark Knight, so only 1 order, you still have a 10k shield. If you are Abyssal Dark Knight, so 2 orders or more, you have 15k shield. So he's essentially a trigger for Counterblast, which really helpful. Once again, you're playing on the defensive. You're getting 3 attacks a turn, you're not restanding anything, you're not calling anything mid-battle, you're just getting big honking numbers, which means your opponent's probably at least guarding 1 or 2 attacks a turn, and you're going for the long game. So you just defend yourself because you're only attacking with tokens most of the time, and you're rebuilding your resources so you can keep on making tokens, with cards like Bulbul Mine and all that. And remember, Orifice's ability, the Counterblast 2, call 3 tokens, it's not once per turn. So if you somehow have Counterblast 4 during your main phase, you got a full field of tokens if you need to. It's probably not going to come up, you're probably not going to need it like that, but it's a thing. You're using your defenses, and of course the PG, standard PG, 4 copies, once again, defensive deck. Alright, moving on to our trigger lineup. Standard 1 over trigger, 8 crit. We already have big numbers, so we want to make sure that they're hitting hard. So, and your opponent's going to want to guard them. So if you put a crit on one of those big numbers, they're probably giving up 2 or 3, maybe 4 cards just to make sure that an attack doesn't hit that, or they're giving up a valuable PG. 4 heals, pretty standard. Once again, every deck I'm ever going to run is always going to have 4 heals. And then 3 draw. So the reason I go with draw over fronts is because I already have big numbers. I don't have the biggest draw engine. I mean, yeah, I have the Howling Moonlit Knight that's guaranteed to at least get 1 in my hand, to Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. But and we have Drumler, who's later game, but it would be nice to just get more cards in hand. This at least replaces itself as a 5k shield with probably something potentially larger in shield, or at least another piece to start attacking with. But we already have big numbers. We don't need fronts. Fronts are kind of unnecessary. There is a point where numbers do get too big, so having a draw trigger is fairly nice. And you're noticing I'm using the Aurora Battle Princess draw trigger over the Orphist style trigger, just showing doesn't matter what your ride chain is, it doesn't matter what your aesthetic is, you can choose whatever card you want. And I like Amy Orange better than the, I think it's like a tiger or something like that. On top of that, if you wanted to, you could also swap like Cardinal Fang Fovi for Battle Princess Red. You know, it's just something you can do. They're the same card, they do the same thing, they're just aesthetics at that point. But that thing does look cool. So that right there is Orphist. So both these decks, they're a little bit on the grindy side. You want to go for the long game with these, so you got to keep your opponents in check, under control, or you got to keep your hand big so that you can just keep on guard, 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 guard. Your reset sources are under your control with Mobile Mine, so keep their resources under your control as well. Anyway, I'm Vanguard Ace, and I'll see you guys next time.